Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Tonight on Our News, legislation to replace emergency orders tabled. A prisoner found dead in his cell this morning. And the state environment minister in the hot seat at COP26. Welcome to Our News, and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Michael Darville, tabling the health services rules that will replace the emergency orders for managing the COVID-19 pandemic when they expire on November 13th. Jasmine Brown reports.
Those COVID management rules were tabled just under 2 weeks before the state of emergency is set to expire. And according to Darville, it's a much better alternative.
While in opposition, we promised legislation to replace the emergency orders. This morning, we are delivering on that promise and finally closing this dark chapter in our country's history. On the 13th of this month, the current COVID-19 emergency orders will fall away, and the competent authority will be dismantled. We are amending Section 29 of the existing Health Services Act so that the management of the COVID-19 pandemic will now be the responsibility of the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Dr. Darville explaining in Parliament that the guidelines laid out in the Health Services COVID-19 Prevention and Management of Community Spread Rules 2021 and Health Services COVID-19 General Rules 2021 outline protocols for businesses, social gatherings, and other activities.
Even though cases have been falling, we cannot let our guard down.
So what would the rules entail? According to the Health Services COVID-19 General Rules, the minister shall appoint an advisory committee to advise him on current epidemiological status, inclusive of key indicators of the COVID-19 outbreaks and the implementation of measures to guard against the spread of reoccurrence of the deadly virus, among other things, including the sufficiency of hospital supplies and testing capacity.
These new rules will replace the emergency orders. They will also allow us the flexibility to make adjustments as needed to respond to the changing variables that this pandemic presents.
When it comes to public health protocols like the wearing of masks in public and practicing social distancing, they will continue to be enforced. Violation of the health rules could attract penalties that range from hundreds to thousands of dollars. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jazz.
In other news, a man incarcerated at the Bahamas Department of Corrections was found dead in his cell this morning, according to National Security Minister Wayne Monroe. Monroe says a doctor has taken the matter in hand and all necessary steps have been taken.
I have, Madam Speaker, the unpleasant task of advising the House that this morning an inmate of the Correctional Institute was found unresponsive in his cell and was found to be dead with what appears to be signs of injuries.
Well, the Minister of State for the Environment was put on the spot at the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow as an international environmentalist asked if the Davis administration will move ahead with oil drilling. She warned this would be a massively grave mistake. Our Vonique Toot got the Prime Minister's response to this issue. She joins me live now from Glasgow, Scotland. Good evening, Vonique.
Good night, Christina. The controversial issue of oil drilling in the Bahamas was dredged up all the way here in Glasgow as an international environmentalist with strong ties to the Bahamas pleaded with the Davis administration not to go down that path. It comes as an oil company awaits the government's decision on the renewal of its licenses. Well, we caught up with Prime Minister Philip Davis today and asked him about widespread oil drilling concerns.
The absence of being able to find revenues, right, to adapt and mitigate against climate change, we have to look elsewhere. Drilling in of itself does not necessarily mean exploitation. If you drill and find, you could monetize the find without exploiting it. But for right now, what we are doing, what I'm considering, is is the replacement of the thought of drilling with monetizing our carbon credits.
Amber Nuttall, who is the co-founder of Extreme Hangout, put Minister of State for the Environment Basil McIntosh on the spot today when she asked him during an environmental youth-based forum in Glasgow if the new government intended to move ahead with oil drilling.
Your predecessors, unfortunately, allowed oil drilling to begin for the first time ever back last December. Are you able to offer these young people and the young people of the Bahamas the assurances that this is not a road that your government are going to continue to go down?
Why do you want to put me on the spot? You just said.
Forgive me, Minister. For the young people, I had to ask you.
Yes, you just said we are a new government.
You are.
Just elected to office. I cannot answer that question directly right now because we do not know. We need to evaluate and see what was done prior to us getting into office.
In August, Challenger Energy Group, formerly known as Bahamas Petroleum Company, revealed that it has reinvigorated the search for a farm-in partner for the next phase in its continued efforts to find oil in the southern Bahamas. CEG said at the time it is awaiting government's decision on the renewal of its licenses. The company completed its first exploratory Perseverance 1 at the beginning of the year, but did not find commercial quantities of oil. Nuttall, who is the daughter of the late Sir Nicholas Nuttall, who founded the Bahamas Reef Environmental Educational Foundation, said she wanted to hear McIntosh say to young climate activists the Bahamas won't hold other world leaders to account here at COP26, only to go home and issue license renewals.
We all have to look home as well and see what we're doing there. And there's no point in asking other world leaders to hold themselves to account if the Bahamas aren't going to play their part as well.
Nuttall, who spent half of her life in the Bahamas, says she would love to see countries like the Bahamas lead the way in the renewable energy sector and receive funding to do so.
This is not the moment for the Bahamas to decide that it needs to embrace oil and gas. Oh, I think it would be a massively grave mistake. I would like to see sustainable development funds emerging from, the Bahamas houses many international banks. Let's raise some great money. Let's create sustainable development for the islands.
Nuttall insisted that it would be a huge mistake to go ahead with oil drilling. It's a sentiment shared by many environmentalists back at home. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Vonique. And just before we wrap up, you look awfully bundled up. How's the weather over there?
Well, it's 11:30 p.m. here now, so it's freezing cold, but it's a beautiful city and it's been a beautiful experience thus far.
Thanks so much, Vonique. We're looking forward to the rest of your updates every night right here on our news.
This report is brought to you by EY, building a better working world.
Well, the former Prime Minister is hitting back at the new housing minister's assessment of the Prospect Ridge development. Julian Gray has that.
As questions continue to swirl surrounding the Prospect Ridge development, the former Prime Minister sought to set the record straight as he defended the work that was done for the community.
The cost of the property should, not as was stated by the minister responsible, increase. The cost should decrease.
Minister slammed current housing minister JoBeth Colby Davis for saying the cost of the Prospect Ridge development may be higher once a proper study is done. Defending the advertised price, Dr. Minnis says it was based on how much infrastructure would cost.
The infrastructure, which is the government's responsibility, and I totally agree with you, is $16 million. If we were to divide the 300 lots into the $16 million, then the property value is $53,000.
From a land ownership dispute to a topography study that needs to be done, the new housing minister said the project was plagued by a number of missteps. Minnis, however, insisted the project was properly done.
They had ownership to a portion which did not compromise the 83 acres. The Department of Environmental Planning and Protection completed its first review of the EIA and requested that it be augmented with topography and other studies. The committee carried out the bidding procurement process to engage service providers to carry out the infrastructural and architectural drawings for the community. based on the conceptual sketch and other specified criteria.
Despite Minnes's explanation, Colby Davis stood her ground.
Everything should be done properly and by the book. And there is a process and there is a step-by-step procedure that is required to be done in order for subdivisions to be processed and issued out for persons to buy in and be a part of whatever the project is. And that was not done. He said there was a EIA presented and reviewed, but they requested a topography. So how in the world can you say you have a confirmed amount for infrastructure when you do not have a completed topography and no master plan, and you were using a Google photo?
1,500 applicants were reviewed by the committee put in place to oversee the project. Colby Davis says on Thursday, applicants will learn whether this housing subdivision will move forward or not. Reporting for R News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Partly cloudy skies outside the R News studios tonight. Greg Thompson has the latest from the Weather Center.
Thanks, Christina, and happy Monday evening, everybody. Very cool conditions expected across the islands. We woke up to 64. Early this morning, temperatures now into the upper 70s outside our studios. Few clouds, we'll call it mild. Light winds out of the northeast at 5 knots and very comfortable feels-like temperature in the low 80s. Weak high pressure system remains in charge of most of the islands. We still have that weak frontal boundary across the southeast Bahamas, some showers and isolated thunderstorms with that. But that weak high pressure system will remain in charge of our weather overnight through tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Stay with us. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come, economic growth predictions for 2022 and how much the PM says it will cost to tackle climate change. Stay with us.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
The central bank is predicting economic growth in 2022, according to Governor John Roll, who says value-added tax changes will be good for the economy. Here's Berthany McDermott.
The projections that have been put out point towards increase in value-added tax. And from my understanding of the administration requirements of value-added tax, there would be efficiency gains.
The new VAT policy is expected to take effect no later than January 2022. Central Bank Governor John Roll says while he hasn't seen the tax models, reducing the rate of tax will result in gains.
From my understanding of the administrative requirements around value-added tax and the outcomes that you can get from increasing complexity versus decreasing complexity, there are potential gains if you reduce the complexity of the tax.
Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkida said government plans to keep VAT at 10% and announced the exemptions on bread basket items and other categories will be removed. Government expects to collect an additional $92.3 million in revenue, with $80.5 million coming from VAT. As the economy still struggles to rebound amid a worldwide crisis, Roll says the central bank's view is that the economy will grow mildly by 2% for 2021.
The performance of tourism over the first 3 quarters of the year continues to support the central bank's view that the economy will grow mildly within the 2% range for 2021. This mainly reflects the timing of when tourism restarted in 2021, rather than the current level of business being experienced.
On the other hand, the central bank is projecting an up to 8% increase in economic growth for 2022, which Roll says will result in employment opportunities.
This, combined with continued recovery in occupancy rates and the return to use of residual room inventory, will generate forecasted economic growth for 2022 anywhere between 6 and 8%. It will allow for much needed return of employment in the sector and downstream improvement in other parts of the private sector and in public finances.
Prime Minister Philip Davis bumping elbows with influential world leaders today during day 2 of COP26. Vonnie Toot has that.
Groups of protesters chanted outside the heavily guarded gates of the SEC Center today as world leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley took the COP26 stage in a call to action. Prime Minister Philip Davis, who is in Glasgow for the UN Climate Change Conference, says for him, it's about securing climate adaptation and mitigation financing to build for resilience. This effort, he says, will take billions of dollars.
It's building to mitigate and building to mitigate, and that is going to be in the billions. What we've heard from Boris Johnson, for example, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, he has called upon the G20 countries who have committed to make the $100 billion investment in the climate fund for the purposes of mitigation adaptation. He's called upon them to live up to those promises.
Davis says something he is exploring during his time here is how the Bahamas can monetize its carbon credits and access concessionary lending.
If the G20 and the world lenders do not respond to us, and again, they have not been responding because we have what they call a graduated state. We are not eligible for concessionary lending. That is going to change because we are now working on a framework, what they call the multi-vulnerable indexes, to ensure that countries like ours could have access to concessionary lending.
Davis, who has had side conversations with some of the world's most influential political leaders, says so far talks have been constructive. We asked the Prime Minister what would happen to a vulnerable country like the Bahamas if it doesn't get the funding it needs.
We'll be like up the river without a paddle, as the Proverbial saying goes. But my conversations so far to date, we've been on the lips of many people because of Dorian.
Prime Minister Davis is expected to address the UN Climate Change Summit tomorrow morning Eastern Time. Reporting from COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland for our news, I'm Vonnie Toot.
Here in the House of Assembly, opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis today questioned the Davis administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic with relaxed restrictions amid rising cases and clusters of COVID-19 on the Family Islands.
Since coming to office, the government has loosened some of those restrictions. In recent weeks, there have been outbreaks in several Family Islands. Residents have gotten seriously ill and some have died. I ask, where's the plan for the Family Islands? Where's the plan to protect our island communities that do not have big hospitals to deal with such surge?
Health Minister Dr. Michael Darville shutting down accusations regarding the Davis administration's handling of the pandemic on the Family Islands, noting that election was called during the worst surge of the pandemic.
When we came in, we met a situation burning as a direct result of neglect from the former administration. There was a cluster that was untaken care of, and as minister, I was catapulted to be able to address the situation.
Darville says those clusters have since been contained. Meanwhile, House Speaker Patricia DeVoe warning members of Parliament that she will not tolerate rules being broken in the House of Assembly. The Speaker says several issues arose questioning the integrity of the halls of Parliament. She labeled the issues intolerable.
There will be no point of order on the government's statements of this policy. Communications are not speeches in an ordinary debate. They are therefore not subject to the rules governing regular debates. Members are not allowed to interrupt a minister's communication.
When our news comes back from the break, a British teen cycles 600 miles to meet a Bahamian government minister. And Marcellus Hall has the latest in sports. The details when our news returns.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
This is our news. Welcome back. A busy sports weekend as we get you caught up on our NBA players, the World Series, and more. Here's Marcellus Hall.
Thanks as always, Christina, and welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Absolutely busy sports weekend for our Bahamian athletes. And, of course, some international stuff as well. Starting off with our Bahamian athletes, where our NBA players in action. Let's give you details on how they did right now. So Buddy Hield and the Sacramento Kings, they were in action yesterday, taking on the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas. Kings have been off to a pretty decent start. They were above 500 going into yesterday's game. That, however, did not hold up. Mavericks, thanks to a long 36-point three-pointer from Luka Doncic, they steal the win, 105-99. Mavericks improved to 4-2. Sacramento falls to 3-3. As for Buddy, he had a bit of a slow day on the offensive side, played 30 minutes, finished up with 11 points, 8 rebounds, while shooting just 4 of 13 from the field. Taking a look at some games from Saturday, where the Phoenix Suns and DeAndre Ayton were on the floor. Taking a look at how this one turned out. Suns picking up win number 2 on the year as they hold off the Cleveland Cavaliers 101-92. Taking a look at DeAndre's stats on the day. He finished up with 17 points, 12 rebounds, another double-double for him. He also had 1 assist in the contest. Like I said, more importantly, the Suns do pick up a big win. If you're watching the World Series, well, the Houston Astros, they find themselves down in the series, but very much still alive. Picking up a big win last night as the series progressed. Taking a look at how this one turned out. Yesterday's game, the Atlanta Braves jumped out early, 4-0. That did not hold on as the Houston Astros came storming back. They tied the game at 4, then go ahead, winning by the final margin of 9-5. Series now 3-2, shifting back to Houston for Game 6 at the very least, and a potential Game 7. That'll come your way on Tuesday. Again, the Braves still hold a 3-2 lead in that best-of-7 series. And let's not forget, Monday Night Football comes your way this evening as another week of action rounds down in Week 8 of the NFL. Who's your schedule for tonight? As we set up now for a big one between the New York Giants and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, both teams have not had their seasons go quite the way they've wanted it to go. Giants are 2-5 in the NFC East, and the Chiefs, they're 3-4, fourth in the AFC West. And that's your check on Sports Free here on this Monday. Full details of tonight's Monday Night Football action coming your way tomorrow, as well as a look back at the Mingos. They had a good busy weekend for soccer. That's all ahead in sports tomorrow. And meanwhile, I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you.
Thanks, Marcellus. Still ahead, a British teen makes a trek to see the state environment minister. Stay tuned.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
Welcome back to our news. A few passing showers ahead. Greg is back in the Weather Center.
Thanks again, Christina. Welcome back, everybody, for your second look at weather on this first day of November. Taking a look at our satellite view, frontal boundary has stalled the frontal boundary across the southeast Bahamas. Some showers associated with that system affecting those islands. High pressure behind that, weak, but it's very nice. The weather behind that will continue to dominate our weather over the next couple of days. Across the tropics, the National Hurricane Center watching an area in the southwestern Caribbean for a low chance for formation that's attached to that frontal boundary. And then we have subtropical storm Wanda out there. We've exhausted the alphabet for the Atlantic hurricane season, so we move on to the supplementary list. And then we also have another area in the south central Atlantic, National Hurricane Center giving that low chance for formation over the next couple of days. Beaching and boating forecast for all areas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds will fall off light and variable tonight, so very nice cool conditions. But tomorrow, northeast to east, 10 to 15 knots, seas 2 to 4 feet. Your low tide will be at 11:59 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast through Saturday. Nice weather expected over the next couple of days before we get that frontal boundary in here by the weekend. Make it a safe night, everybody. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Greg. Well, a teenage girl cycled 600 miles in cold and rainy conditions from Surrey to Glasgow to present pledges to Minister of State for the Environment, Basil McIntosh. On her way to COP26, 13-year-old Elsie Burrows spoke with students about climate change and what they can do to cut emissions.
So we've got all these pledges, and basically just from the kids, and to show the world leaders that the kids, there are people all around the country, all around Britain who want to make a difference and who want to change their lives so they can help the planet.
McIntosh applauded the teens' efforts to help tackle climate change.
It's going to take people like you to make this world a better place. And, your parents could only be more than proud of you.
Well, thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.